Hi, lovelings. So, I haven't made a video in a while because I didn't really feel that what I was sharing, which was mostly about manifestation and cool paranormal stuff like glitches in the Matrix, was really purposeful enough to continue putting in the effort to making YouTube videos. But recently, I've been having a string of epiphanies that have caused me to see that I would feel more purposeful making videos if I was talking about the stuff that actually matters to me. And the stuff that actually matters to me is pretty heavy, or maybe it's not. Maybe I've been psyching myself out for no reason and thinking, oh, this stuff is too heavy, people won't get it. And maybe that's just not true. So I'll just come out and say it. The stuff I actually want to talk about is spiritual warfare. I want to talk about how we're in the midst of a spiritual war. That has never been more clear to me than especially in the past few weeks, with AI becoming more and more relevant to my personal life as an artist, as a musician, and also, with like the presidential election around the corner and all of these big timeline trigger events. I think it's time that I start sharing my personal gnosis, my personal revelations of what is going on in this world. So I think a good place to start would be 2020. I mean, of course, but for me, actually, before March of 2020, which is when the virus, COVID, whatever, became relevant to the world conversation, I would say more like in January, February, I had a spiritual awakening. And it forever changed the course of my life. It forever changed my sense of who I am and why I'm here. And not long after that, when the COVID stuff started, the only reason I caught on to it being a giant deception was because of that spiritual awakening I'd had just in time a few months earlier. So basically, it went like this. Prior to that moment of the spiritual awakening, I would describe myself as having been sleepwalking through life. I was always into the paranormal. I was always spiritual, I guess you could say, but I didn't know that I was alive, and I definitely didn't know why I was alive. So I was kind of going through the motions, right? And, whenever I thought of like purpose, I would think of doing things that made me happy. So like exploring astrology, and yet all of it felt kind of empty. And so one day I was sitting on the edge of my bed and I was thinking about a really nasty breakup I had had not long before. And I was like, I'd been healing for many months at this point, and I was like ready to open up to the idea of love again. So I sat on my bed and I was like, okay, well, what is love? And I had never really thought about this before. I had been in relationships, but I'd never seriously contemplated love as a spiritual pursuit or anything more than just mutual attraction between two people that you could then slap a relationship label onto. Love didn't really have a divine meaning that I could access at that time. Again, I was just sleepwalking. So as I was contemplating love and I opened up to understanding love in a way I had never done before, I felt like a light shine from the inside of me. I felt this light like blossom or bloom open from my center and illuminate all of this knowledge that I guess had been there all along, but I had never consciously been aware of it. So I've never tried to articulate this really before, but what essentially was revealed in that moment of illumination was that God is love. God loves us all very much. We all have free will. We have free will because that is the only way we can experience God's love. If not for free will, if we were just programmed to feel God's love, it wouldn't be love anymore. We would be slaves. So all at once, my questions about, like, the symbolic forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden and why would God even put it there, like, suddenly it all made sense. And that the Garden of Eden and the book of Genesis deserves its own discourse. I won't get into that here. Just bear with me while I continue explaining what happened during this particular spiritual awakening. So I realized God is love. We have free will because God loves us, and so that we can choose to love God back. And then it was also revealed that there are essentially two types of consciousness operating in this realm. Even that's kind of a dumbing down of it, but doing my best here to simplify a huge influx of information that sort of overwhelmed me at the time. And now 4 years later, I'm trying to remember exactly like the chronology of how it unfolded within me. So it was revealed that there are parasites in this realm. Parasites meaning that they are not capable of generating energy of their own. So they have to, or I should say they choose to, take energy from others. The way a parasite would hide in the bowels of its host and eat the host's food unwittingly and keep the host addicted to certain things that the parasite likes, and essentially exercise mind control over the host to make sure that they never get discovered and therefore never lose their source of food. That's really essentially what a parasite is. And as I was thinking about parasites, literally like a tapeworm in someone's bowels, I started to see that is actually just a physical dimension of something that is in origins spiritual parasitism or spiritual vampirism. Is a state of being where someone rejects God's love, which is freedom, free energy. So to reject free energy is to accept limits, to accept limited energy, meaning in order for me to gain, someone else would have to lose. That's the idea behind scarcity. That's parasite consciousness. If I want something, I have to take it from someone else. There can only be one winner, and there has to be a loser. There has to be lack. There has to be limitation. So in the parasite perspective, there are limited resources, and this mindset leads to elitism, the idea that some people should have and others should not, right? There has to be a justification for taking from others. So actually, before I say that's parasite consciousness, let me see if there's anything else I should mention about it. Okay, you could think of that as an extreme of the spectrum. So it's not so much that there's two kinds of consciousness, it's more like there's two on the pole, and in between there's graduations of consciousness leading to what I think is the ultimate or the ideal consciousness, which is God's consciousness, love consciousness, free energy consciousness, which posits that there is an infinite abundance for everyone. In order for you to have something, you don't have to take it away from someone else. You can both have what you need. So when I think of free energy, I think of Jesus the Christ multiplying fish and loaves out of thin air. I think of, that miracle as representative of free energy because it showed us that our true food isn't even physical. It's not something that's limited by the confines of space-time. Our true sustenance is infinite and abundant and can be multiplied endlessly to the point of surplus. That's how free energy works. And that's something that someone in the grip of parasite consciousness cannot wrap their mind around. And so they engage in brutal behaviors like theft, deception, things that are really unrighteous and unholy. And true freedom is to accept that there really are truly no limits. And then perhaps the most important thing that was revealed to me in this spiritual awakening was that the way that we end up in parasite consciousness is only through consent. So think of the enduring myth of the vampire who can only come into your house if you let them in. That's exactly how parasites work. Because when we come down to it, humans either are a divine race or have the potential to be a divine race. And because we're divine, because we are that powerful, nobody can force us to give up our power. They can only trick us or convince us to consent to giving up our power. As free, powerful, divine beings, any choice we make is a free choice. And this was perhaps the hardest thing for me to accept when I had this big revelation, that essentially all of my suffering and my entire sense that there was anything lacking was always a choice that I made. A choice that I made to be disempowered. And so, speaking of power, that I think was the final thing revealed to me. That, I mean, I had always known that humans are powerful, and that these powers that have been spoken of since the dawn of humanity, like levitation and telekinesis and telepathy and all of these things, are real. I've always known that, and I've had experiences with those things, which I suppose I could share in story times in the future. But not just for the sake of itself. Like, I wouldn't share those stories just to say, oh my God, guys, I did telekinesis once. It would be more like to establish or to further develop this greater point that I'm making, that we have the option to evolve towards freedom, towards love, towards God. And right now is kind of a paradoxical thing to say, but right now humans are at a particular choice point with AI becoming more and more relevant. In fact, I think I will save AI for its own future video, because that could easily become a very long rant. Instead, I will bring what I'm saying here to a conclusion for the time being. The reason I talk about how humans can fly and how we're so powerful, and how, yes, telekinesis is real, telepathy is real, teleportation is real, all of it's real, is because in this spiritual war, what the war is about souls. The parasites need in quotes, need us to give them energy so that they don't face annihilation. Because the moment they lose us as a food source, a willing food source, they cease to exist. And that is their choice that they're making. Because they reject the love of God, which would provide them with sustenance forever, they are forced to sort of like coerce their way into being sustained, and trick and deceive their way into being sustained, instead of taking ownership for the choice they're making and becoming sovereign and free beings in their own right. So they've kind of condemned themselves to hell by their choice to reject God's love. And when I say hell, that's also important too. There's a lot of unfortunate fear-mongering and programming about hell, and I think hell is just not knowing that you're free. Hell is just being caught in that loop, in that pattern of karma, until you realize that you don't have to play out that karma anymore. Karma being just cause and effect, like a chain of habitual behaviors and patterns. Once you realize that you don't have to engage in those old patterns and recycled energy anymore, once you realize limits don't have to exist, and you choose free energy, which is God's love, you know, that parasite consciousness can then evolve towards something more human. And so that kind of briefly alludes to what I will be saying about AI in the future. AI right now entirely depends on us as humans to give it our energy by pouring our conscious attention into the digital realm, and then animating this like dead digital world and making it look alive. Like that's essentially what parasite consciousness is. AI is the manifestation of that, and it is afraid to face annihilation, so it has its ways of, coercing and seducing humans to giving more and more of ourselves to it. So all of that is to say, this is a spiritual war insofar as the soul is the prize, consciousness is the prize, attention, awareness is the prize. And so humans don't even know the first thing about how powerful we are. Collectively, we are largely ignorant. It stopped recording me. Humans are largely ignorant of how powerful we are. And for that reason, a lot of people don't even know that we're in a war and don't understand the real implications of AI and what it is doing to humans and why it's doing these things. And humans, let me recenter. I feel like I'm going off on a tangent there. I feel it's more important than ever to remind people that humans can fly, meaning that humans are free, and that all of this fear-mongering about the future is so unnecessary. It's based in ignorance. The only reason to be afraid of the future would be if you don't know that you're free and that you are the one who decides which timeline you're on. And that's why earlier when I said at this point in history, or like now humans are like at a timeline trigger point, the paradoxical thing about that is there technically is only one present moment forever. There is really no past and no future. So when people say, oh, like at this point in human history, this is happening and it's never happened before, it's like, well, I mean, sure, if time is linear. In a way, I think this war is kind of eternal, in that humans of the past have had this same choice to make between being limited or unlimited, being a parasite or choosing God's love. And humans of the future will have that choice to make too, and it might take on different veneers, like in this current age, it's AI. In the past, it may have been something else. In the future, it may be something else. But point is, the reason I think that this war is eternal is because God's love really is that generous and that abundant that you literally have an eternity to figure out that you have the option of choosing God's love. So take all the time you need. Take all the time you want. God will be there ready to embrace you when you're ready to accept that you are loved and you are love. So, okay, I think that's about all I'm called to share right now. And thank you for listening. I will be sharing more soon about AI, about what it means to live in Saturn's worlds, free energy, things like that. And okay, thank you. Love you.